Michael Tellinger, scientist in the true sense of the word, never shying away from controversial issues. He's scrutinizing every clue very meticulously after a 30-year-long obsession with the origins of humankind and the genetics anomalies. He wrote Slave Species of the Gods, and his latest, of course, Temples of the African Gods. We're going to have some fun tonight talking with you, Michael. Welcome back.
Hello, George. Lovely to be speaking to you again.
It's an incredible story, coming here to mine gold for their atmosphere, finding out that they didn't want to do it themselves, so they needed to alter the species that happened to have been on our planet at the time, and voila, here we are all of a sudden.
We are certainly cloned, and there was a specific malicious intent in the cloning, and it was to do with being slaves, so we had to be smart enough to follow orders and not to forget our instructions, not to get bored and wander off and start picking our noses and forgetting what we had to do, and also have the capacity to understand fear, because you can't tell a dog, if you don't do this, I'm going to beat you up when I come back in an hour, because they don't understand that. So the species that was created had to understand that if they didn't perform their task, they would be punished. But what they needed to do is to create a creature and a species, a slave species, that was capable of taking instructions, following orders, and doing the job that they needed to do. Now, when people ask, well, why didn't they just use machines if they were so advanced, Well, you can't train machines to climb down a hole and fetch that over there and bring it here. Machines can only perform, basic things. That yes, they can be technologically advanced. You can levitate things, and you can cut. You can have advanced laser beams or phaser technology that could cut incredible holes in the ground and so forth. But then somebody needs to go and do the hard work, and that's what the slaves were for. And they cloned them in what I believe to have discovered these cloning tanks here in southern Africa, that are scattered among these ruins.
And what do you think? What age did they start working? 15, 12, 20? What do you think? And did they have to wait that long for that to happen?
Good question. No, they didn't. They didn't clone them into babies. You can imagine, you're not going to clone babies so you wipe their bums and wipe their noses and look after them until they're old enough to go to work in the mines.
So they came out as adults right away.
That's right. Just like in the many sci-fi movies, you see vaults of the UFOs and in the vaults somewhere, these giant amniotic sacs hanging with large humanoid beings hanging in them. That's it. That's what we're dealing with here, George.
Okay, that's it.
It's mind-blowing. And it took 9 months from zero to full-grown adults that would come out of that as a baby, obviously. So they would have to teach them to walk, they'd have to teach them to understand and comprehend, and teach them to use the tools and the skills, and then probably within a few months or few weeks, put them to work. And it was only when we needed to procreate ourselves, when they realized they weren't cloning these slave species fast enough, they said, hold on, we need to allow them to procreate on their own because we can't clone them fast enough. So that's when they took the famous story in the Bible when they put Adam into a deep sleep, and, well, not in the Bible, the Sumerian tablets tell us a lot more detail about that, Sitchin's work, how they put Adamu into a deep sleep, they took the essence out of his rib, and I believe that would have been some bone marrow, because they've already created the DNA. They're not going to go back into the lab and recreate the same kind of DNA to create a female species, right, a female partner for the male species, which incidentally also suggests that the first humans cloned were only males, all male and probably hermaphroditic without any sexual organs, and asexual. And it was only when they wanted them to procreate that they took the DNA, took the essence out of the bone marrow, added the 23rd chromosome, the X and the Y chromosome, the male sex and the male and the female sex chromosomes, that they then added to the species and basically re-engineered the species and created the female counterpart so they could procreate. At which point they probably put them into this place, some sort of a garden or a observation tank or a camp where they could see how they would get on and if they would, copulate and create offspring, and if the female wouldn't eat the male after they copulated, which many species do.
No, that's true. They do that.
Yeah, so the story of human origins, it gets really gruesome to people that are not prepared to hear this kind of stuff, when they believe the beautiful story of Adam and Eve and the fairy tale kind of story. It is far from that. What's been going on this planet is a long manipulation of beings, and activity of extraterrestrial activity has been going on for a long time. Adam's calendar, based on that 40 Shah arrival, puts it at about 285,000 years. So Adam's calendar is 285,000 years old. But the activity on planet Earth goes back millions and millions of years, because I've shown in a video clip on my YouTube channel that giant footprint that's about 2 hours drive from where I live. That footprint is in rough granite, and that footprint is about 4 feet tall, which suggests that whoever made that footprint would have been about 7.5 meters, or 23 feet tall. So the history of this planet is so strange and so different from what most of us could possibly fathom or imagine. Ancient times and epochs where there were huge battles taking place in the sky between the gods, and between the gods and the humans, and so forth. So the history of this planet is truly far more mysterious and spectacular than most of us could imagine. It seems now, with more research, that the Annunaki were not only malicious in what they were doing on this planet, but they were doing it on other planets as well. And they were mining gold on other planets. And they used the gold in the form of white powder of gold, which you know all about, right?
Yes.
And monoatomic form of gold. They have committed a great sin against all of humanity.
Wow.
And for that, for what they've done here on Earth, they've been cast out of the book of life by other beings of consciousness. We are really a species in great trouble. And we're not in great trouble because of our benevolence and because of our loving nature and our loving humanness. We're in trouble because we are manipulated and controlled and abused beyond our wildest beliefs. Every aspect of our lives, every aspect of our humanness has been hijacked and abused, not just recently. This has been going on for thousands and thousands of years. Our entire human existence, and the reason we're here, is for one reason only, in this form and shape that we're in today, is for the mining of gold. And it still continues.
It still continues,
as I told you, we don't know what happens to the gold once it leaves the gold mine. The humanity is under severe attack, and we can't continue living as we are. It's so mind-blowing as to how much gold is actually coming out of South Africa. We don't actually know how much gold comes out of South Africa. And the official amount of gold that's mined in South Africa every year is around 250 tons. That's the official amount of gold. And you can imagine how much unofficial gold is mined and exported in ways that we don't understand. Remember that just across from not far from Johannesburg and across the border in Botswana is a secret runway, that one of the longest runways in the world, in the middle of nowhere. And you got to ask yourself, well, what is that runway doing there in the middle of nowhere? It is what I've been actually calling. It's one of the best kept secrets of the Illuminati. And boy, have they done a good job to keep this a good secret from the rest of the world.
They sure have. They sure have indeed.
So it's important to note that pretty much everything we get in these ancient texts, the Bible included, obviously, is encoded information. It's deeply encoded with occult and mystical knowledge and information for us to understand once we start to wake up. So, and anyone or anything or any god-like entity that tries to assert its control over you and humanity, and especially if they exhibit any signs of physical desire or desire for physical things, like burnt offerings. Bring me burnt offerings and make sure you put salt on it. Otherwise, I will smite you. I mean, that's just an insane thought to think that God, the divine source of all things, was instructing, people to go and kill a sheep and throw it on the barbecue and bring it to me well salted because I'm hungry.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense.
It's crazy. And especially also in Genesis 2, and this is a good example that I use all the time. This is the first reference to gold that we get in the Bible. And the reference to gold does not come from humans. It comes from the gods, or from God, as it's referred to in the singular form, which is incorrect. And in Genesis 2, the gods say to Adam, hey, there's this place called Havilah, this land called Havilah, where the land is really fertile, there's water, and it's a great land, but also there's gold, buddy. And I want you to go there because I want you to dig the gold for me, because that's in essence what we're being told there. And remember that in Genesis 2, when Adam is introduced to the concept of gold, he is alone on earth. Eve had not yet been fashioned from his rib. So that gives us an idea that Adam was digging gold as a slave species for a long period of time before Eve was created so that they could procreate. We don't have to be trapped here, and it's only when you know this, when you realize that you're trapped, that you're a slave, that you are being controlled. Only when you realize that you can free yourself. The light will set you free. Knowledge will set you free. And none are more enslaved than those who believe they are free. And I believe that there are definitely Annunaki factions that have turned against the original invasion of this planet. There are those that have remained behind, often referred to as the Anunnaki remnants, that are desperately holding on to power, and they could be the ones that are actually behind the absolute control of humanity, sitting behind our governments, doing all the ugly stuff to us human beings through their corporations. And then there are the other ones that have also risen in consciousness, who have also realized that what they did here was completely against the divine plan, and are now trying to resolve and fix the problems that they've created on planet Earth. There's definitely a struggle for Earth, and some people call it a battle for Earth going on. There's no doubt in my mind, but I believe ultimately it is our rise in consciousness and realizing that we are divine beings at our soul, at our core, at our DNA structure. We are divine beings of light and infinite love, and that will ultimately prevail.
12 years ago, I was actually abducted by extraterrestrials. I didn't know who they were until once they took me. And I found out later they call themselves the Annunaki.
Aha.
And they're 9 feet tall. The fellow that I spoke to actually looks very human. And he was blonde-haired and had a beard. And he called himself Ziel. Interesting part, when I came to their planet, and this is not a delusion, I've been there I was there, like I said, I was there 12 years ago. I remember everything perfectly. And they wanted me to know everything that's going on. They called the planet they were on called TM, and there's another planet called Tiamat. They live for 1,000 years. And hardly anything is actually on the ground, so to speak. There's no vehicles, so to speak. They're actually their machinery is way advanced. They levitate above the ground. The people are just like us. When they took me, I want to share this with you. When they took me, they somehow freaked me out because they looked like giant aliens, with the big head and the black eyes. When they took off, it was a helmet, and they took off the face shield, and they were human, like I said before. And I asked them, well, why are you wearing this huge helmet? And he said, because our sun's rays blind their eyes, and their eyes are like a bright blue.
Well, that would make sense.
Yeah. And so they have a difficulty living on our planet at the time, he said. And he said, we are the good ones. He said, we have the bad ones that were here thousands of years ago that enslaved the people. They would use the men for the gold, to mine the gold,